It's such a small world I'm finding in fintech
Yes.
when it comes to the network and the people and the brands and what have you.
Yeah. But they are so nice. I want to say it's probably one of my favorite sectors I've ever worked in. Everyone's just very nice,
Yeah.
which is refreshing.
Sharon, thank you very much for being on the WP Talks with podcast today. We very much appreciate your time out your busy media schedule to have a chat with us about all things ESG and energy related.
Thanks for having me.
So I thought perhaps it'd be good to start with, what inspired you to become an ESG and energy editor at Reuters? What's the journey that you've been on in terms of your journalistic career to this point?
I guess I more or less fell into it. I was initially doing law, and I worked as a compliance analyst at Goldman. And after a while there, it just felt a little bit stifling, and I wanted to do something a bit more creative. So I left the legal sector, and I just jumped right into documentary making. So I was a researcher for a Channel 4 production house.
Yeah.
So they're the ones that do Unreported World and a few Dispatches episodes as well. And that was focusing on, inequalities, also like ecological damage. At the time, it was Malaysia and like fly bomb fishing and the damage that it's doing to coral reefs. So that already started to pique my interest in the like environmental and social sector.
Yeah.
And after a long journey in financial reporting, mainly for Euromoney, and then Informa, um, at Informa, I was covering fintech, but because I was the editor there and my editor-in-chief was very flexible with what I can like steer the magazine towards, I steered it towards more diversity and green tech-led initiatives. That's when I saw the Reuters Foundation. It had the Inclusive Economies editor role, getting to the nitty-gritty of what I enjoy doing, which is making new products, launching new products that are about sustainability. So yeah.
Yeah, and what does a day in the life of an ESG and energy editor at Reuters look like? What are you doing on a day-to-day basis?
So I'd say it does vary. So some days it's like wake up, got to check all the news stories are coming through and populating on the sustainability page, which we launched. Prior to that, it was about testing, checking in with other teams and what stories are there and whether I've missed anything. Then depending on whether it's a newsletter day, it would be just focusing my attention purely on the newsletter, getting that done, getting that subbed, populating it on our system. Then if I have a panel, which I often do, I do quite a few speaking events, either for Reuters or externally. So like last week, for example, I went to Vilnius to speak, but it was also a newsletter day. So I had to juggle that. So it was like, gotta finish this, but at the same time, I have to network and I have to prepare for my speech. And it's a similar thing if there's like an internal one to do. So it's like juggling, finding the time to do the panels and prepare accordingly.
It sounds like a lot of juggling.
Yeah.
What sort of thing do you look for the newsletter specifically? Because I know that we've worked with you previously on newsletters for the ESG side of things.
Yes. So I guess it depends on which newsletter, because now there's like essentially two variations. So for the main newsletter, which is Tuesdays and Thursdays, what I look for is something that can connect and tell a cohesive story. Because as you'll see with the top line, they do link to various other little stories, but they are connected together. And that's kind of what I look for is there a pattern? Is there a theme with whatever stories are coming out? Because oftentimes there are. It's just a matter of trying to find it. So, for example, the last few weeks have mainly been about this sort of anti-ESG wave that's been emerging in the States. So loads of Republican senators have just been hopping on the bandwagon to politicize this otherwise like bog standard like instrument and tool for companies to ensure their strategies are aligning in a certain kind of way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's mainly been about finding those stories and linking them all together, making sure that it forms a cohesive whole. Then for the top stories, it's mainly about like the pressing issues, maybe some that may have fallen like in the cracks that some people might not have thought about, and that probably will align for both of the Sustainable Switch Normal and the Climate Focus one on Fridays.
There has been, especially within the banking industry, this greenwashing that's been going on, where it's sort of like they're sort of saying that they want to do something good, and they're sort of displaying that they're doing something good. But when you look behind closed doors, it's not really matching what they're doing and what they're saying. And it's really important for those two to align when you're sort of talking about ESG initiatives and that sort of thing.
Exactly. We've seen that not just with like banking, we've also seen it with, of course, fossil fuel giants, as you would expect, like Shell. They've really come out and told their shareholders, please don't do that. But there's been more and more activist shareholders who are like, no, we want you to make sure that you actually live up to what you said, and live up to this Paris Agreement as well. So that's been really fascinating to see that it's just sort of like across various sectors. This annual general meeting season feels kind of like Bridgerton, where they have like a season where all the shenanigans happen, and that is definitely where we're at. Between May and July, you'll probably start hearing a lot more about what companies are doing when it comes to like shareholder governance and stuff. And it's often quite interesting, but not a lot of people like knowing about it.
Yeah, that is really interesting. There was sort of one final area that I wanted to focus on, because I know that we've talked about some of the challenges with ESG sectors that perhaps could be doing better. Are there any sectors that you think are doing ESG well, that are really getting it, that are perhaps ahead of the curve with their initiatives?
Surprisingly, the financial institutions of late have been looking like they are doing more for like either their shareholders, their clients, just the environment and the social impact as well. I was speaking to a CFO of a European bank just the other day, and they were talking about all the not just green initiatives they have, because they've invested in green bonds, green finance, but it's also about like social entrepreneurship opportunities for women, ensuring that within their actual systems that like all the racial discrepancies that have been highlighted to them are being changed. So they did note that, you know what, yeah, we did look at our data, and, you know, Black or Asian people do not get the funding required, or women as well are often penalized and they don't actually get the funds required. Some of them don't even wish to get funding for their small businesses, that they'd much rather do it alone because they feel like it's easier. But they have that, I guess, initiative to try and encourage women to do that. It is good to seek out funding, especially if it's going to make your life easier, and their rates are solid for them as well. So yeah, actually getting into the nitty-gritty from financial institutions has been an interesting journey to watch, especially considering I was doing, you know, the fintech coverage and the banking coverage in my previous role. So watching that journey happen gradually has been really interesting.
Sharon, thank you so much for being part of the podcast today. There's been some really amazing insights, and really appreciate again taking time out of your busy media schedule to come and join us today.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you so much for having me. I feel like I've just been ranting on about ESG stuff, but I feel like I could talk about this all day.